Hello there, good morning and early afternoon. Welcome to our next thought leadership webinar here at Hydro Point. The topic today is resiliency in corporate social responsibility and sustainability. We're going to start here. I'm going to go over just some basic logistics with the GoToWebinar control panel. At any time, if you have any questions for us, go ahead and enter those questions in the control panel, and we'll get to those questions towards the end of the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, so if you have to jump off early, don't worry about it. We'll send you a link to the recording after the session. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get started and introduce here our host, Ben Slick, who's Senior Vice President of Business Development here at Hydro Point. So Ben, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thanks, Meg. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Weather Track Wednesdays. For those of you new to Hydro Point, we are an outcome services company focused on helping our customers achieve improved water use efficiency through our smart irrigation control products called Weather Track and our flow monitoring and leak detection services called Water Compass. I'm really glad to be joined today by Vaishali Sampat, who at the Kilroy Real Estate Corporation is their Manager of Sustainability and Corporate Responsibility. She's got 13 years in the real estate industry with 7 years at Kilroy, and she's LEED certified. So welcome, Vaishali, and maybe just give some additional background for the audience on you.
Yes, thank you, Ben, and thank you guys all for having me here today. As you mentioned, I have 13 years of experience. Just right out of college, I've been part of the real estate industry. So I actually started off as a staff accountant working at one of our high rises in downtown LA, not with Kilroy, with another company before. And I then, after a few years, transitioned over into the property management field and worked basically my way up into a property manager position. I started with Kilroy about 7 years ago, working in property management as well. I oversaw our West Los Angeles and Santa Monica portfolios, and that included our corporate headquarters. And then there was an opportunity in 2018 to transition over into sustainability. There was a position that opened up when we sort of inherited or started our CSR, corporate social responsibility program. So I was invited to join that team, and now that is my sole focus, is working on our sustainability programs and our corporate social responsibility programs.
Great.
Yeah.
So maybe help the audience understand more about Kilroy. What is the mission? What are the goals? What kind of assets do you folks manage?
Right, great. So Kilroy Realty is we're a commercial owner and operator. We primarily operate in California with sort of a smaller portfolio in Seattle, Bellevue area of Washington. So I would say, you know, Kilroy is a very innovative company, but sustainability is really it's in our blood. It's what really drives us as a company, and we tend to be a leader in this field. So, you know, I would say that, sorry. So we have 13.5 million square feet of stabilized portfolio with about 3 million square feet in development at the moment. Some of our biggest tenant base is tech tenants, media tenants, as well as life science buildings. We operate primarily in Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego.
All right. So as you attract a portfolio of tenants, you know, they might have their own sustainability goals, and you've got yours as stated at Kilroy. How do those mesh up?
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, we really look to our stakeholders to kind of drive our sustainability goals. Sure. And, you know, being able to, we kind of rely on our stakeholders. So this would be maybe our tenants to help us implement our sustainability goals. I would say, for example, we have, you know, one of our tenants up in San Francisco has an entire building up there. And, you know, it's with their help, they basically run sort of that entire building, but with their help, we were able to make it, implement more energy efficiency programs. We actually certified it with a True Waste certification, the first high-rise in the world to be certified True Waste. And it's also a Fitwel certified building. And so I think, you know, having our sustainability goals align with theirs makes it easier for us to be able to implement them.
That's great. So let's take a step back and just maybe try to throw a lasso around what is corporate responsibility? What is social responsibility? What is resiliency? These are all words that we hear, but let's talk about the practical applications. Why are they important?
Yeah, so corporate social responsibility, I mean, I think it's, what you would say is a commitment from a company to kind of evaluate its environmental, social, and governance practices. And I think it serves as a way to hold a company accountable, to itself, to its shareholders and its stakeholders, and sort of the public at large, or society at large. And it helps us to make, drives us to make business decisions that not only don't have a negative impact on the communities or on society, but actually serve to provide a positive impact, or to make a positive contribution and enhance society. So I would say that's really what corporate social responsibility is. It incorporates, everything from human capital development to supply chain to health and wellness, community service, and also resiliency. So when we talk about resiliency, it's just kind of one piece of the pie of corporate social responsibility. And, it's funny, resiliency is kind of a sort of a broad term, but I think, in our context at Kilroy, we I would say that it's a company's ability to accurately identify its short-term, medium, and long-term risks, and to implement strategies that help to mitigate or at least minimize some of those risks.
Okay. So, what are the factors that go into building a resiliency strategy? I mean, does climate change or other things factor into that?
Yeah, so we identify climate change as sort of the biggest risk to our business operations, but and this can span from transitional risks to physical risks, and so we because of that, we are working to reduce our carbon emissions by implementing more renewable sources of energy. And we have created goals that will help us to reduce our Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions, by 2050. We're also the first real estate, I would say the first public real estate company, REIT, to commit to carbon neutral operations by the end of this year.
Wow, that's ambitious. Many of us are all stuck at home, and some of the tenants have empty shell right now. I mean, what are you guys doing in the time of COVID to help your clients get ready to welcome their tenants back?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have been working really around this. I would say that we could sort of break this down into two categories. First is evaluating. We contracted with an independent industrial hygienist, and they helped us to evaluate or inspect our indoor air quality, our ventilation rates, and our sort of elevated custodial cleaning practices. And they, this was based on sort of the CDC guidelines and the WHO guidelines. And so because we already sort of had a building health program in place for so long, we did really, really well. We didn't have to invest a lot more into creating a sort of, excuse me, one second. We didn't really have to invest a lot more than that, and we were basically certified that all of our buildings were considered safe, and I think that it kind of created a safer, we can say that we have a safer work environment.
So you manage existing square footage, but you're also in construction and you build new stuff. When you're designing with COVID in mind, how is social distancing and other things like that, or work remote, changing the way you lay out or the way you build?
Yeah, I mean, now we're having to sort of go back to some of our new development and rethink our designs to incorporate social distancing practices. So that might mean including open space plans, and opening up, stairwells so that people have alternate paths of travel, and they're not, you're kind of reducing the density within the elevator lobbies and then in the elevators. We're also going to be incorporating touchless systems as sort of a best practice as well. In all of our new developments. And all of our new development already has MERV 13, which is very high rated filters. So
Interesting. I mean, when you think of social responsibility, sustainability, most people just think of implementing green things that reduce kilowatt hours, BTUs, or K gallons, but you wind up with the executive suite helping the construction process, the tenant recruitment process. I mean, you touch a lot of areas for the business.
yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So I was going to say, you know, when you think about, you've done a number of, you know, energy reduction projects, you've done waste reduction projects, you've done water reduction projects. Maybe talk about a program, not water related, but other, you know, that has been successful for you. And you know, what is the impact then, whether it's lighting retrofit or whether it's, you know, HVAC improvement, or, you know, window film tinting, you know, any of those things that are directly impacting the profitability of the buildings and the improved life quality for the tenants.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned lighting retrofits. That's some of our favorite projects to do because it is really scalable for us and has been really successful. The payback period is really, really quick for our lighting projects. And our engineers really love them because it also reduces the amount of, you know, their maintenance that's required with replacing bulbs. As you know, LED, it takes maybe 5-10 years you need to replace the bulb versus the CFLs. So it really helps. Well, you know, engineers are really on board with it. Our property management teams are on board with it, and so that has been a really successful project. And we're always finding new lighting projects, and we're working on some right now. So those have been really wonderful. We're also, you know, this is a little bit bigger, but we also are seeking out opportunities for installing renewable energy. So, you know, anywhere that we can put solar panels, we're working with our tenants to do so, and currently working on that with some of our properties right now. So that's really big for us because, you know, as we kind of see that energy prices may change, as there might be, you know, policies that are implemented that require us to limit our carbon emissions and our energy usage. This has been a great solution for us.
And so let's kind of narrow down into the water side of the world. What kinds of water use efficiency retrofits or solutions have you explored?
Yeah, I think I'd like to break this out kind of in sort of two categories. I think we have an interior water management plan and an exterior water management plan. So with our interior water management plan, we do an inventory of all of our fixtures and any opportunity that we can install low flow fixtures, you know, whether it's in our toilets, urinals, faucets, shower heads, anything like that. You know, we tend to do those projects. So that's sort of more the interior. I would say with exterior, we look at our landscaping. So anywhere where we have sort of a vast landscaping, we seek out opportunities to install, you know, to retrofit our irrigation. And I know we work with, you know, HydroPoint, which is helping us to engineer a 3-year payback projects on water use efficiency with smart irrigation and also finding repairs for us as well. So that has worked out really well for us and something that is scalable.
And so as you look at this going forward, you know, what kind of metrics do you use or what kind of benchmarks do you try to establish? Do you compare water use per property or per irrigated square foot or per building square foot, or are you just looking at year-over-year comparisons? How do you measure your success?
Right. So we do more of a year-over-year comparison. We collect our data annually. We then use that data. We sort of analyze any swings, whether it's, you know, positive or negative swings or reductions or increases. And then we use that. We set up a sustainability kickoff calls with all of our property management teams in the beginning of the year to discuss the prior year's performance. And this, you know, anything that has sort of an outlier or sort of larger swings, we require an explanation from our property management team. So, you know, it could be something like occupancy, which has a big effect on your usage, or it could be other sort of issues that we need to look at when under a microscope a little bit more closer. So that's really sort of the start of it. We also we conduct annual inspections with our property management teams, and this helps us to seek out opportunities to implement efficiency programs. And, I think other than that, we have, there's obviously ordinances in place that help us to benchmark our energy usage in our buildings. And then, for all of our eligible properties, we do pursue certifications such as LEED or Energy Star, and that helps us to determine which buildings are performing well in relation to others within our portfolio.
So I'm going to embarrass you for a minute, but I want you to talk about your success at Kilroy. You guys are a GRESB standout. Your sustainability reports each year are in the upper right quadrant of success. Maybe talk a little bit about what goes into building the arduous process of data collection and then uploading that stuff into GRESB to ultimately get those scores that make your buildings more profitable for your investors.
Yeah, it's actually a lot of work. We call it disclosure season is what we have right now. That spans a great deal of our year, but it's all worth it. We start with data collection. All of our data, we contract with a third-party utility data management company who works directly with our property management teams to collect their data, and then it's all tracked in Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So this is energy, water, and waste, which is a free tool provided by the EPA. And from there, we download, once we get all the data, which when it's Kilroy controlled utilities, it's pretty easy to get because it's in our name, but then we also have to get our tenant data, and we have a goal of getting 100% of our data. So we go out after our tenants for all their data. It's actually written in all of our new leases that they have to provide that information to us now going forward. So we then kind of enter that into our GRESB spreadsheets, which then all gets uploaded into their system. And then from there, it gives us an opportunity to review any kind of outliers, any big swings, and kind of allows us to do a reality check on our data.
So when you're going through evaluating your projects for water use efficiency, do you have a return on investment metric or a payback metric that you require?
Yeah, so we do require a 3-year payback period for our properties, and this is because all of our efficiency projects are passed through to our tenants. So this allows us to capture back the cost of the investment.
So do you tie that payback to their lease term?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Is that payback tied to their lease term? Is that how that works?
Yeah, I mean, some leases are, longer, some might be shorter, but this is sort of the average time of the lease. So it may be captured back before the end of their lease, before the end of their lease. So, but it's typically a 3-year payback or less. And this allows us to have our own budget as well.
Okay, so you've got a separate sustainability budget, and you've got a budget that you bill back through your tenants, and they approve those projects, and they actually pay for some of those improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's passed through our, I would guess it's passed through like capital common area maintenance.
So maybe take a minute and talk about stakeholder engagement at the properties. How do you interact with who do you typically interact with at the client? Is there a peer in sustainability, or is it the corporate real estate office, or is it risk? And where do you guys interact with the client?
Yeah, so there's kind of a multiple of ways. I mean, when we're talking about our tenants as one of our stakeholders, we communicate with our tenants in multiple ways. First of all, we do occupant satisfaction surveys. So these surveys have evolved over time to include more sustainability minded questions. And so this gives us an opportunity to get feedback from what they're looking for from us. Whether it be more EV charging stations or, just more sort of maybe building health features, active design, things like that, bike storage, whatever it is. And then we also have dedicated websites, property websites, which we have a sustainability page within our site. So this is where we showcase all of our the building's achievements. We provide tips for our tenants there and resources that they can go to and visit. And then for some of our larger tenants, I would say, especially a lot of our tech media tenants, they do typically have a sustainability representative, and we work closely with those representatives. And we're very, I would say we're a very sharing company. We really want to share what, what we're doing with everyone, with all of our stakeholders, so that they can look to us for guidance, but also kind of give us opportunities to collaborate and kind of move the industry forward.
We'll stick a pin in that, because I'm going to come back at the end of this and ask you to share some of those key learnings with the audience, both successes and stumbles maybe. So, but before we go there, when you're on the lookout for new solutions, where do you typically find products or services or improved processes? I mean, how do you encounter the next best thing?
Yeah, I mean, we're a very, very forward-facing team. So we, spend a lot of time, well, pre-COVID, I should say, we spent a lot of time doing, going to conferences, and sort of networking there, meeting with vendors. It's a lot of also word of mouth, working with other, we have a great network of sustainability professionals that we kind of look to kind of get their idea of who have you worked with, how has that worked out for you, and get recommendations there. And then we also look at, internally with our engineering teams. I mean, they are very much in the know of some of the newer technologies that are out there, because they're all kind of talking to each other as well. So it's really just a lot of communication and networking and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, I know we met you at the LA BBC. That's where Sarah was a speaker, and we kind of bonded there and got involved, and it's been a great relationship from our perspective. I mean, you guys are the kind of customer we look for, who's got a stated commitment to water use efficiency, and that the problems aren't just indoors. I mean, you can replace the toilets and the sink rinsers, and that might be 40 to 50% of the water used at the property. But if you've got any kind of a landscape, not managing that well can result in a higher than needed water bill. So
exactly.
Our partnership together has been great.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of opportunities. Also having the, like you said, having the opportunity to sort of speak gets us out there, sort of, and allows opportunity for people to sort of approach us for opportunities. We really love, if I could just keep going, sorry. We also, we love the idea of being able to pilot new technology, and so in order for us to streamline that, we launched the Kilroy Innovation Lab in 2017. So within this lab, we are able to source out new technologies, and we can pilot them in one of our buildings. And there's a built-in sort of measurement and verification platform that helps us measure the success of that project or that program, and then it gives us an opportunity to scale it up as well.
That's interesting. So who runs that? Is that a building facilities team? Is that an IoT team? I mean, who actually runs that lab for you?
Yeah, so we run, I mean, it's a virtual lab, but we run that lab ourselves. So we're the ones who will determine which technologies qualify, or which programs qualify, and then we sort of track it as well, working closely with the vendor to do so.
Great. So I kind of want to summarize some of your best practices, but I also want to give the audience insights into things they can learn to avoid. So have you tried implementing something, an initiative that didn't work as anticipated? And can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to water management, we had some issues. We had kind of replaced some of our urinals with waterless urinals. And it sounded like a great idea, but actually, what we found is that there was sort of multiple issues. One was some of the buildings we put them in have copper piping, and copper piping erodes over time with waterless urinals. So that became sort of we ended up spending a lot of money to make those repairs for that issue. Also, I would say that the low flow. So the low flows themselves work really well, the low flow fixtures. However, when you're replacing them in an existing building and a building that's already operating, the tenants have a tendency to notice, especially in kitchen sinks or in the showers. And we have had some tenants sort of push back on that because they're used to a certain level of water pressure. So having to work with our tenants and explain to them why we switched and what sort of the overall benefits are of this has been something that I wouldn't say is a failure, but has been kind of a challenge for us, something that we didn't really anticipate.
In some of your irrigation and retrofit projects, before you encountered HydroPoint, were there issues that not having a turnkey solution created problems for you, either in terms of not hitting the investment target or not irrigating properly and the landscape quality suffered? I mean,
yeah, we did. We had one project here in LA where we did install a smart irrigation system. Unfortunately, and I'm not sure 100% of the details, but I know that it under irrigated our landscaping. And basically what that led to was a lot of finger pointing, among the landscape company, among, the vendor that installed the smart irrigation. And so that was kind of a big problem for us as well. And it ended up being.
HydroPoint's approach to managing with you is proactive outreach. When we see issues that are alarms after we deploy, we escalate to the contractor and ultimately to the Kilroy personnel to try to resolve those together so that we not only help you hit your savings targets as planned, but also to make sure that landscape health, because you've got to rent the place, it's got to look good to the tenant, right? And so making sure that it's all in balance is not for the faint of heart. You just can't abandon it. You've got to have an ongoing partnership with somebody, and that's why we love working with you as well.
Yeah, it is. And also, having the landscaper on board and really understanding what's happening is also really important.
Yep. So to summarize our conversations today, what would you say are the core ingredients for implementing a successful CSR program?
Yeah, I mean, I think, CSR, it's, I think it's kind of, it's an ethos, right? It's an ethos that really starts at the top with your executives, with your C-suite. I think they have to have a passion for wanting to do the right thing. And I think this passion sort of cascades down throughout the company. For us, we, beyond having just wanting to do the right thing, in order for us to sort of set clear objectives, there was a board CSR sustainability committee was established in 2018, and so those members having sort of more broad market insight will help the company to be guided into setting those objectives. We then created an employee CSR sustainability committee, which is made up of members that are across all disciplinaries, whether it's myself, it's sustainability, our human resources, legal, so that we're able to bring in everybody's sort of perspectives and help set those targets and those goals each year for us. So, for us last year, we were incorporating, for example, diversity inclusion training and what that would look like for the company and how we can realistically deploy that. And so I think those are really sort of the first steps that you have to take, is just knowing that that's the direction you want to go in, understanding what the stakeholders are looking for as well, right? Mm-hmm. So understanding that side of it, look what investors are looking for, what your tenants are looking for, and also employees, right? What attracts top talent to your company. So understanding that and setting up. Sorry, go ahead.
That's a really big one, just because this next generation of knowledge worker, is more environmentally minded as they enter the workforce. Which employer do I pick and what place do I want to go work, and are they sustainable? I mean, are they using disposable plastics, or are they, putting in canteen fillers? I mean, just little things like that frankly, someone from my generation wouldn't have thought to be that important is super important to this next
absolutely.
level of knowledge.
Yeah, we're in the generation of sort of awareness. Those who are asking for a little bit more from their companies, as they should.
My daughter makes me smarter about this every day, so I'm getting there.
Good.
Well, I just want to take a minute then to open up to the audience for questions. Meg, you've been fielding those. Perhaps there are some that we could help share together. Meg, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, both Ben and Vaishali. Just a reminder here in the GoToWebinar control panel, under the questions section, feel free to put in any questions you have for either Vaishali or Ben here. First off, we do have a question here. This is for Vaishali here. Does Kilroy use your own budget for upgrades or retrofits? Or do you have your tenants usually pay for some of those upgrades?
Right, so we do have our own budgets. So we are able to sort of set our capital plan, our capital budget for the year, which is great for us because that means that we're not competing with the asset management team for room on the budget. These budgets cover efficiency programs, so any kind of retrofits or anything like that. It also covers certification fees, so LEED, Energy Star, well certifications. It also, actually, sorry, I take that back. It doesn't cover Energy Star certifications, but it does cover LEED and well projects and fit well as well. And then we're also able to put in EV charging stations. So those are the three sort of main categories of the budget that we're allowed to pay for. They do require, the efficiency programs do require a 3-year payback period. So even though it comes out of our budget, it can actually be billed back to the tenants. So we do have a recovery plan, a 3-year recovery plan from our tenants.
Perfect. Here's one other question. Going back to the climate change that you guys were talking about earlier, what about some of those of us in California that have any sort of water use drought legislation? Can you talk about a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because that is also sort of a risk that we've identified as well. I mean, as you said, it's a drought-stricken state, and we do see legislation being put in place. Right now, there's a lot of focus on energy, but we do see sort of pending legislation coming down the line around water. As a matter of fact, in Santa Monica, there is a water neutrality ordinance. So I would say, you know, you have to kind of get ahead of it, be proactive in seeking out ways to reduce your water usage, implement a water management plan. Some of the ones that we talked about today are a great place to start. Also looking at your cooling towers is another sort of great area where you opportunity to reduce your water usage. So kind of getting ahead of it, and will sort of help brace you for any kind of incoming legislation.
Great. Here's another question that just came in. How do you go about seeking consultants to create sustainability initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, we do everything in-house. We are our consultants. However, we don't just sort of make things up in our head. We do look, for example, to our disclosures to help us kind of guide, understand what investors are looking for, and this helps set our policies. We also look at certification bodies. So our environmental management system is very much reflected by the LEED guidelines and policies, because we find that to be sort of the most robust sort of guideline out there. Same with our building health programs are really, we look to fit well and well to create those programs and make our decisions that way. So that's sort of, you know, how we approach it. But it's all really done mostly in-house.
And then with that whole pilot installation you have set up as well. Sounds like you do a lot of that testing and measurement and verification from that as well.
Yep.
Awesome. So last chances for any questions. Those were some great questions that came in, so thank you very much. If you do have any additional questions, you can always email us afterwards. But I'll go ahead and kind of wrap things up here. So I do want to thank Vaishali, obviously, for being a great guest here. Before I wrap things up, is there any kind of summary or anything kind of last minute questions or statements from both you, Ben and Vaishali?
I just want to thank Vaishali for taking time out of her day to do this. I know she's still in the middle of putting a bunch of sustainability stuff together for her company, and we're grateful that she took this time to be with us today, and thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I really enjoy working with you guys with HydroPoint. So I'm really honored to be here and be asked to be here today, and I really love being able to speak to you guys about some of our initiatives and our programs. We're very proud of it, and I would say for anybody out there who's thinking about you know, implementing their own CSR, their own sustainability programs, I mean, definitely it's the right path forward, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions or any comments. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Here's just a summary of some contact information, email addresses for anyone joining us today that has any questions. HydroPoint, again, is a smart water management corporation with both smart irrigation and leak and flow monitoring services. Kilroy's website's on there, and then Vaishali's email address is on there as well if you'd like to reach out to her. And then just a plug for our next thought leadership webinar. It's going to be August 20th on best practices for water use reduction in HOA homeowners association landscapes. So that's going to be a great webinar. It's going to be next week. For everyone that joined us today or that missed the session, we are going to be emailing everybody out a recording of the webinar, so feel free to watch that at your leisure. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks again, Ben and Vaishali, and everybody, have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.